Make sure. Yeah. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Good
Or
morning.
good.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hey, everyone.
Woohoo! Hi, Kathy.
Hi. I don't know who that was, but hi.
It's Dwayne.
Oh, hi, Dwayne. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm driving.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
As
okay.
But
always.
as
Go easy.
always,
Go easy. We'll try not to get too excited.
but hey, I'm
There's
here.
All right.
Charlie and Nikki and Holly
And Sharon.
and Sharon and Kat. Oh, cool. Laurie.
Sharon's coming with us to Bali. I think I might have told you.
And so's Nikki.
And so is Nikki. Exactly.
Yeah, this is a good group. And Jill.
And of course, Kat's coming to Bali too.
Yeah.
She's listening at work, so wait.
I am listening at work. I'm just sneaking in.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
is Nancy. I'm driving too.
That's okay.
Hey,
Nancy.
Nancy. Take care.
It's okay. All right. So let's see. We'll give it one more minute and then we're going to jump in. Um, okay. Oh, Bridget's here. Let's let Bridget in. And then, okay.
Okay.
All right. So, okay, Jackie's poo picking, so she's listening.
The perennial job.
The perennial job. Yes, yes, yes. All right. So everybody here probably already is familiar with Kathy Price and her work, but to anyone who has stumbled upon this and is not, Kathy Price is a person who is one of the most,
Be careful now.
wait, curious and passionate people that I've ever met. And she has a childlike energy that makes her so fun to be around. And international hugger. If there was ever a hug off or some kind of award system for hugs, Kathy would definitely be gold level. So she has a business called Point of Balance where she helps people to heal using what she calls the field. And she's very adamant that we all have this ability and she likes to teach people about it, and she also helps people at different points in their life live up to their full potential. So she does mentoring work. She's just, if you're lucky enough to be around her ever, even virtually, it's a good day. So that's my
Oh,
introduction to Kathy. And Kathy,
thank you.
in our first talk about the telepathy tapes with Shay Stewart, Kathy was like vibrating on her seat and had so much really beautiful things to add and was so excited. And I thought, I have to have Kathy on because I know she's holding, like, she's got so much more, but she doesn't want to take over the show. So
I'm going to keep calm. Well, I'll try. Put it that way.
keep calm and carry on. So
Exactly.
without further ado, we'll launch into just our, this is a very relaxed forum. We just like to talk about things that we're interested in around the telepathy tapes, around the ideas that spring out of it, and also the telepathy talk, the talk tracks that also came out of it. So it's not backing any kind of science or disproving any kind of science. It's we are curious and we are happy that this conversation is happening. We think that this is well needed and that there's a lot of people out there that have been doing this work that hasn't gotten mainstream uh, interest or a light shined on it in that way. So we're here to talk about it.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you for that introduction as well. It's like, whoa. I've gone very shy now.
Oh, please, please, that won't last. That
You
will
know me
not
better.
last.
That'll be the day.
5, 4, 3, 2.
And I'm back in the room.
So you were telling me just before we started that there was something about this, there was a heart thing. Was it the
I couldn't be there, but I listened to the second talk you did, the Shay, which again was amazing. And if I'd been there, I would have been jumping up and down as per the first one. And there were two things that I wondered if I could just go back to. And the first was the talk of the heart having memory. And so synchronistically, about 3 or 4 days ago, Karen Rolfe posted, put a post up, which showed there is now peer-reviewed evidence to show the neurons within the heart. And if I can share, could you put me to share?
Let me see. Share, okay. And then how do no, that's me sharing.
Oops, I lost you
All right,
completely.
hold on. Let me find you. And let me see how I do this.
I think if it says everyone share, you can just do that and you can cut it off
I
there.
think that
It's
I
just I've
can.
got a.
I'm going to make you a co-host.
Okay, cool.
So see if that allows you to share your
Yeah,
screen.
I think so. Yeah, so I want to go to, oh, hang on, let me, oh God, no, oh, no, we don't need an invoice. That's what we don't need. Oh, here we go. Okay. I'm looking at all these things going, what on earth have I got up here? Documents, desktop. That's what I want to. Okay, maybe I won't at the moment. Hang on. Because it's not showing what I want it to show. You are sharing your screen. Good.
Yeah, you have the power.
Can you see that?
Sheep.
Can you see the heart?
I can. Yes, I remember this.
Yeah, that's it. So that's what I just wanted to bring up. There was that this now, and it's interesting. I remember talking to someone, a very sort of renowned scientist, about 3, 4 years ago, and I mentioned two things. One of them was about the heart, how it has memory, and how, I mean, the classic case was the little girl of about 10 who received a heart from another little girl who died. And then this little girl, the girl who received the heart, started having a lot of dreams and almost nightmares. They were about what being attacked. And the upshot was that from her evidence, they convicted the man who killed the little girl that she had the heart from. And there's not only the thing about, I think you mentioned it last time, people whose taste changed, like the lady who suddenly wanted burgers and beer and then always eaten healthily, but when she got this new heart, which was from a young guy, suddenly her taste changed. And so there was a lot of anecdotal evidence which was mounting up, but now they'd found the actual physical evidence about the neurons, how many, something like 40,000 neurons in the heart that make up the memory. So that I just wanted to sort of put that in the mix because you were talking about it last time, and this just came up. So as I said, synchronistically.
So before you get rid of the picture, so just for anybody that's just listening, right? These are there's two hearts, and they're kind of like it's almost like a see-through vision of them with different colors to outline different parts of the heart. Tell me what we're seeing. So in one of them,
don't ask awkward questions.
well, one of them has all these yellow spots.
I think what we're looking at, if you look there, so one of the hearts has got a lot of yellow around the top, and I think those are the neurons. And then you can see the red, which I think are more the blood vessels. So they've obviously looked at this to find out where the memory neurons were. So they've gone into it to distinguish the types, because obviously you're going to have a nervous feed to the heart, which is going to control the way it beats, and it's connected with the vagus nerve and all of that. But then they've looked at the particular types of neurons that are visible. So my feeling is, and I haven't sort of looked into it, so don't quote me, is that the two different images where they're highlighting one in yellow and one in pink, the different types of neurons, which are proving that the heart actually has memory. And we know that there's more information goes from the heart to the brain than the brain to the heart. That's been established for quite a while. But this is now actually proving what people long thought, that not only we think the heart has memory, but these anecdotal evidence from when there's been heart transplants and the recipient has then had different experiences. But the biggest one is that they convicted someone because of the memories that the little girl had.
Well, I had shared something that I found interesting, and then I saw that somebody said on another one of those posts that everything in that is not true. So I went and copied and pasted it and asked AI, as we do, to check this for me. And one of the things so some of the things it said was that the heart does act like a pump. But that said, the heart is also an endocrine organ releasing hormones like ANP and has its own intrinsic nervous system and interacts closely with the brain and emotions. It talks about the electromagnetic field being the largest organ with the largest electromagnetic field in the body. And so on. So, and I know that I think in that post that you were referring to, they talked more about like having that consciousness kind of brain proof now in the heart as with the gut, right? So we have like we have three brains, the gut, the heart, and the mind. And I just find it fascinating because a lot of times, if you think about it, we feel things in the gut and the heart before we think them.
Yeah.
Like if we're afraid or if we think someone's breaking up with us or, like before we have thought, like we can get hit with that feeling as if that is the place that's having the understanding first.
That's so interesting, and that interestingly ties in with the with what the other, because this scientist that I was speaking to, very respected, and I said also about the fact they've done research where people are sat in front of a computer screen, and every so often a picture will flash up. And most of them are benign pictures, pretty flower, puppies, whatever. But then there'll be a shocking picture. It could be an accident, it could be a lot of blood and things. And they've shown that the person is reacting. It was I'm not going to say the actual time, but it was a significant amount of milliseconds before the picture came up, and showing that there's this almost precognition about what's going on. And that's science. What you're saying there about the gut knowing something's going to happen without, because we always go to the brain, always that the Western sort of paradigm is that the brain controls everything. And this is where Philip Shepherd's book, Radical Wholeness, is so wonderful, because he's all about how, yes, the brain is there, but actually is the rest of the body. We have to connect the two and sort of let the brain do its thing, but we've got to bring ourselves into our body and listen to that. And the space within the body is very, very important. And he also talks how important the pelvic bowl is as a source of instruction and intelligence, if you like. It's about bringing it right the way through. So, yeah, that book is one of my absolute favorites.
Well, it's funny. This morning when I was walking the dog, I realized that they had released some more of the the talk tracks that I hadn't heard. So I was listening to the one that's talking exactly about what you're talking about. And they said that they were even doing this experiment with finches, where
Right.
when they were about to show a picture of a snake to the finches seconds before started flying around the cage.
Getting
And
agitated.
yeah, you know, there was a lot of talk about different kinds of experiments with animals and then of course with people. And have you heard of this? Now, this is where I should have taken notes. Have you? I think I might be able to even look it up. But there was, she was talking about I'm going to tell you what it was right now because it's going to make me crazy, uh,
If you don't.
yeah, as it does. So, telepathy talks. So she was talking with a scientist. Well, he said that he was an armchair scientist. So, but he's been studying all of this stuff for like 20 something years. And yeah, for the science of intuition. And so he had something called, where is it? His name is Adam Curry. And I'm gonna find it right now. Unless they're not gonna say. All right, anyway, I'm gonna look it up and share it with you.
Yeah.
Basically, you can do this thing, and I still don't understand it. So take this with a grain of salt. But it sounded really interesting where it was talking about one of those auto number generators and
Mhm.
how you can have your own. And like people then, what they're trying to do is figure out if there are anomalies where they might, I think it's like an app, and then they ask everybody a question like,
Mhm.
you think there'll be an earthquake tomorrow, or something that's kind of would involve precognition. And then they look at the data of how many people said yes versus how many people said no versus whether or not there was an earthquake. And, and of course they need a lot of data because, you know, chances are there's not going to be an earthquake the next day. But
Yeah.
maybe if they ask that question every day and people weigh in every day, they can see if there is a difference in when there actually is an earthquake the next day. Did
Yeah. When, yeah,
people, yeah.
picking it up. And there's also, I'll try and find the link to it. Many moons ago, I think it was through IONS, the Institute of Noetic Science. You can go online and you can register and you can do psi tests for yourself. So basically, you could get 4 cards up and you've got to guess where the circle's going to be. You can do remote viewing that you can try and guess what the picture's going to be. You can try and guess where a certain mark is going to be on a screen. There's a number of tests you can do. And I know, I'm talking years ago now, probably 20 years ago, I was doing this. And I got into such a grief. They actually got in touch with me because I was getting consistent results, because that's all I was bloody doing practically, to sort of go on do a sort of a more structured test. But I have to admit that as soon as I was on the structured test, I was like, oh shit, oh God, like that. It was like, oh, someone's watching me do it now. But anyway, recently I went looking for it again and I have found it. So you can go and you can sit there. I mean, if you want to waste your time, I can give you a really good way to do it. But it's really interesting actually to like you've got 4 cards and where's the circle, where's the diamond, and you just can do it yourself. And then you get a report back. It tells you whether it was, oh, my favorite word, statistically significant. How many guesses you get. You do a run of 10 or 20 or whatever.
It would be
Um,
really interesting to do. Maybe we can share that
yeah, no, I'll find the link there. I'll put it on. We'll share it with everyone. But yeah, so that was the heart thing was something that I really love, because there's too much, even if it is anecdotal evidence, it's too consistent and it's too much out there. But this is something that I want to go into as well when we get going, about the statistics of it and how people just can't take this. You see, it's that word again, statistics. I want to lift and say statistics, okay? But the other thing I wanted to quickly go back to the last talk was about Konstantin Korotkov rather.
Oh, you
I
can say
actually
that word, but I couldn't say.
yeah.
You can say that name.
That's good. It's got no susses in it. Yeah, I was really lucky that I got to meet him at a conference in Munich about, oh God, 10, 15 years ago, when I was really studying the reconnective healing. And he was much aligned with that. And he actually brought a book out. I'll show if, hang on, let me see, where am I? So it's Science Confirms Reconnective Healing. This is a book he
Okay.
wrote. And I mean, it's full of it. Oh God, it's full of data and graphs and God knows what. But what I love is his work. He's got something called I think it's a biowell field analyzer. And when he did his talk in Germany, he was telling the tale of how he gets people to put their fingers on a scanner, and round the tip of each finger, you get a readout of energy. And from that, each part represents part of the body. And when he did it on a friend, he noticed that there was a discrepancy, if you like, around this guy's heart. And he said, oh, I'm just going to say, that's what I've picked up. And he said, no, you don't need to worry. I literally have been to my cardiologist last week and everything's fine. And so, fair enough. A month later, he had a heart event. And so what he's looking at is this is a really early indicator if there's something wrong. And again, I've got, if I can share, hang on, let me get rid of that. God knows. This is all in the lap of the gods, guys, whether we share this or not. If I get that up.
So while you do that, I'm going to just read that Facebook post that you were
Oh,
talking.
yeah.
So it says the heart's neural intelligence, the intrinsic cardiac nervous system is capable of sensory processing, short-term memory encoding, and bidirectional brain communication.
Mhm.
Cardiac neurons express, okay, here we go, acetylcholine,
Yeah.
no rep, no
Oh,
repinephrine,
really?
and
Yeah. Thank you.
dopamine.
So glad you're saying it.
Yes, well, trying terribly. The same neurotransmitters used in hippocampal memory. They learn, adapt, and remember. And memory structures in the heart, peer-reviewed studies show heart neurons are organized in ganglia supported by glial scaffolding containing microtubules linked to quantum coherence and encode memory via phase-locked vibrational patterns, which is mirroring brain-based spatiotemporal memory mechanisms. Okay.
Yes. Well, I'll just say yes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. It's like I read these things and I love Nassim Haramein, who I will be getting onto hopefully. And it's like I can understand the and. And that's it. I read their papers, go the, yeah, and, verb, cool. Okay, let me see if I can share this just to give you a quick. Can you see? Oops, hang on.
There we go.
Can you see that?
It's very tiny.
It's very small. Yeah, it wasn't a big photo, but you can get hopefully the gist that all of those are fingers, and then you've got a field around each finger, and each part correlates to a different part of the body.
So
And
if
then
you
he also,
click on the green, will it make it bigger? The green on the
no, oh no, it just makes my screen go bigger and the things.
Okay.
No, I'll stop sharing that and I'll just show you one other. So you can have a scan of the body,
Oh, wow.
and that's what comes out. And you can see on that one how the field is not consistent.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that whatever modality you're using, and he studied reconnective healing, and he could see a difference, the sort of, I'm going to say, an improvement in the field. The once a session had been had, that the field was much more consistent after a session.
So
So
what this looks like to me, so Kathy's showing a picture of like a person's body. and then around it, almost like how you would imagine an aura. But
Yeah.
do you ever use those little metal shavings with magnets? You know, those little metal,
Yes.
looks
Spiky.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, those lines of metal shavings around the body, except they're colored. And it's showing that on a healthy person, they're thick and full all the way around. And then with someone who may be experiencing some, would that be like body issues, like health?
Yes. I mean, it could be emotional, it could be body, because it's showing the energy of the system is not consistent.
Yeah. So that in those areas, there's a lot less or none.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So yeah, exactly what you're saying. But yeah, so it was just interesting. His name came up, and he's a really interesting guy because he's a bit like Nassim Haramein in that he takes groups to various places around the world. Well, he was, to Peru, and sort of hotspots of energy, and working with people there. But it's very interesting how in Russia this sort of technology is full on. It's accepted, it's used.
mhm.
But then if you try to bring that over here in the Western world, it is available here. You can buy the gas discharge vapor thing or whatever it is, vapor discharge thing, but it's still looked at as pseudoscience, as not got no credence. But I'll always remember him saying that about his friend's fingers, and he literally had a heart event a month later. And that's what he's saying, is that if we can look at the biofield around us, it gives us precursor to what actually is going on. So you see a slight change, a slight variation, and that's an indicator, okay, this is something you might need to look at.
So that leads me to say, so the episode of the talk tracks that I listened to this morning with Adam Curry, he was talking about a lot of the things that they have found around things like remote viewing and precognition and having this effect on the, let's say, the physical world through your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the experiments that have taken place. And he brought up Russia and how Russia has done extensive studies in remote viewing. And a lot of this stuff is done by the military because they want to be able to remote view. And one of the things that he was saying was that all of these things tend to work best when there is a playful,
Mm-hmm.
joyful
Interesting.
energy going into them. And that seemed to be reflected in the telepathy tapes because, the young adults and the kids that were nonverbal or limitedly verbal would say that whether or not they can do it depends on if the person that they're working with believes in them or not. How the good vibes, it's
What
important.
the energy is like. And isn't that interesting what you were just read out about the heart and about the heart field? And as you were saying it, I thought, so maybe it's the fact that when we are in a positive emotion, be it love, joy, gratitude, our heart field is strong and clear, and therefore we connect more easily.
Yes. And maybe like being around more people with that is like contributing to the field, making the field stronger and stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. Multiply. Yeah.
Someone come in with a very constricted energy, it can be almost like a computer virus that just ruins the entire.
Yeah, it ruins the field. And I mean, it's like destructive interference, when you get waves that cancel each other out because you've got but when you're coherent, the waves get bigger and bigger and bigger because everything is amplified. So exactly what you're saying, that it's when people are around you with that energy, and we know it. We walk into a room and we can feel that energy.
Mhm.
Everyone's done it. I'm sure they've gone, either walked in and you meet someone the first time and it's immediately, oh God, I want to be your friend. And there are other times you meet people and you go, oh, okay, maybe I'll just keep my distance for the moment, or you walk into a room and you go, God, who's arguing? even though there's no sign of anything going
Oh,
on.
yeah.
You just, I mean, this is what's been shut down in us so much, because the way we're taught, everything has to be analyzed and broken down, and that feelings cannot be seen as the truth.
Mhm.
When we have a feeling, and there's plenty of evidence now that when scientists are in the laboratory, their attitude to the experiment that they're going to do will affect the outcome.
Well, didn't Einstein talk about that? Like when they were looking at like uh atoms or they had, that, and they were looking at the energy around the atom or something like this. And
Are you talking the double split, the single split and the double split, the observer effect? I
yeah,
don't
like
know.
the
You
people
might
that
be.
expected to see waves saw waves.
Yeah,
And
that's it. So if you looked with the single split, you saw dots, and if you see the double split, you see waves. Interestingly, that's something that I've just found out with old Harriman. Oh my God. I mean, he is literally pulling. There's something called, I think it was the Copenhagen theory effect. I can't remember what the second word is, the Copenhagen agreement. And he actually says in the latest tape that he's put out, latest podcast thing, he says, I'm not quite sure what they were on in Copenhagen, because he's actually disproving or giving another explanation. Because what I didn't realize is at the level of quantum physics, even there's something called the Planck constant. There's a guy called Max Planck, Planck, not Planck, but Planck. And this now is the hub of everything. But apparently when it was first discovered by Max Planck, as Harriman said, he fudged it a little bit, because it fitted most things, but there was a little bit it didn't. So he sort of just fudged it to make it fit. And apparently there's a lot of fudging goes on, which again, you don't realize. And what's coming out now is an understanding and a way of looking that is, or the maths behind it, if you like, which can be moved from quantum to universal. And that's always been the problem, that you could have big physics, Newton, gravity and stuff like that, but it wouldn't fit the little physics, the quantum, and the quantum physics wouldn't fit the mechanical, the big physics. Now there's new maths, new ways of looking at stuff and explaining stuff that comes through. And Harriman is not the only one. There's other people working on it around the world. But it's interesting because there's billions of pounds going into the CERN accelerator. They've got that big ring that goes for miles and miles and miles, and they accelerate the particles to smash them together and see what happens. But there's still, from Harriman's thing, is that they still have fudging going on there, if you like. And he said, if I could have a 15th, it's something like 15 billion or something they use a year, it's some astronomical amount. He said, if I could have a 15th of that, I could prove what I'm doing now. But he is doing it anyway. And that's part of what he's doing, is when we go sort of deeper into the telepathy tapes, it's almost explaining. I mean, my attempt to explain it will probably fall far short, far short. But when I listened to what he had to say, it was like, oh, hallelujah. Here we go, boys. Here we go. And it draws back as well to what Shay was talking about. And I know there were questions last time about sacred geometry and fractals and ratios. All of that is within the new way of looking at the quantum side of it. So yeah, it's really, I was just like, oh, I only understand that and but I know the truth is in there somewhere. Yeah, so
Well, that Adam
it's
Curry was
really cool.
talking about, they have a light that they like a lamp, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts out white light, like regular light. But then don't ask me how it works, but the idea is that you can then go and try to change the color
Oh, interesting.
with your mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of that comes with that. And so he said that what's interesting about it is that people are kind of tickled at the idea at first. And so somebody will maybe think, pink, like, and then 15, 20 seconds later, the light starts to glow pink. He said that what happens though is when then they get really serious about it, it doesn't work anymore.
Doesn't work. Oh,
You
the playfulness again.
Which to me, like if you look at this from a bigger, like if you pull back and look,
Yeah.
like one of the questions is about telepathy and all of these precognition and everything that goes with this is, well, how does it fit into our world going forward? Is it net positive or is it going to be negative, right? And it makes me wonder, is it designed, because this is something that the kids talk about in the telepathy tapes, is it designed that you can only use the power for good?
Yeah.
And if you get too serious, which I mean, it even like
Oh, good.
horses,
Yeah.
right? Kids can do
Yeah.
things with horses because they don't have the ego yet. They don't have all of the, goals and we got to get this done.
Attachments and expectations. Yes.
So if it really exists and you can only really work with it if you're clean and coming from a positive place, then that would really,
That is so interesting because I do get asked about the work that I do with intention, attention, no tension. And people tongue in cheek might go, okay, Putin, what can I do about him? In other words, like, can I put the intention for him to be annihilated or whatever? And I'm not getting political or whatever. But the gist is that, if there was somebody that was doing something perceived as bad, could an intention do something, if you like, bad to them to get rid of them? That's the intention. And I always say no, because the very fact is what you're talking about, an intention of that is such low energy, it's such low vibrational energy, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It has to be high. It has to be the love and the gratitude and the empathy for any change to happen. And that is again something that I'm digging into, consensual reality, in the sense that we cannot create our own reality. In this, if it was only our own reality, we would be stuck in a tunnel on our own, and it would get really boring because nobody else was there. So it's almost like we put an idea out to the universe, and then it's about how that actually interacts with all of the energy around us. So when we're in flow, when we're going in the way they want, and I know there's people here on the call who've experienced this, that when you're in the right place at the right time, everything just keeps falling into place. Things just happen. It's like, oh my God, yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's we're in flow, and we're in flow with the universe and the consensual reality of all the energies around us as well. So we can put the intention out there, but it's always about the bigger picture, what you were talking about as well. The bigger picture is how does our intention lie with everything else around us, and are we coming from the right place? And again, the terminology of being hit around the head by a 2x4, when it's like, oh God, that's not right, that hasn't worked, if you like, and you get stopped dead in your tracks when you thought you were on the flow and you're not. And that's when you're not in the right place of who you are. And you can either take it and get really angry because, no, I want to go that way and now you've stopped me, or you can look at it at, the old thing saying that there's no such thing as failure, it's only information. So that when you get stopped in your tracks, you can go, okay, that didn't work, why did that not work? What's the reasoning behind? And I totally get it that there are moments when you'll be banging your head against a brick wall and shouting every swear word that you know. But at the end of the day, you come back and you go, okay, that hasn't worked. What is it? And that's about finding your place in the flow of you and the universe and your intention within the consensual reality around you.
Okay, so I have a big question for everyone, like just to think about. Because this came to me this morning. And so everything that the telepathy takes tapes talk about is that our thoughts are creating our reality. Our thoughts carry a vibrational force to them. So here we are, we're talking about all of this. And, when you're talking about your own personal life and changing and creating the life that you want to live, it starts with what you expect to see. You have to change inside first before the outside shows up. And it made me start thinking about, okay, so all of the movies that we've watched and so many books that have been written about the future were about this very dystopian view about, we're all just hanging on from our base instincts of war and stealing and resources and competition. And it becomes maybe what we expect to see. And because it becomes what we expect to see, we get it back. And in the same way that you have to feel it and believe it in you about your own life before it changes, I'm wondering if to change the trajectory of the world, we have to, instead of focusing and giving energy to the Putins, we have to focus and give energy to what we want to see. And if we can hold it and feel it and live from that, that then it starts to create it in the outside world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's what you've just described for me is the basic thing. If you want to change the world, change yourself, because it's the sum of all of us changing. I absolutely firmly believe that if enough of us around the world step into exactly what you're talking about, so rise above what is happening in whatever country and send out, I know and it sounds hippy dippy shitty, but it's not. It's love. Love is the most powerful emotion and most powerful energy, most powerful vibration there is. It's the highest. And so while it's, and it's not the act of love, it's the living through the manifesting love. It's living through that energy of love. And this is, you change the vibrational aspect of the world. We've seen how, HeartMath have done the random number generator experiments all around the world, where the ones and noughts are going out. And they've done this for years now. And they noticed that when there's a big emotional shift in the world, unfortunately, these emotional shifts are all negative. They're fear. So it can be the tsunami, it can be a war, the death of Diana, anything like that. And that's when the random number generators became more ordered. And so the accepted idea now is that when there's a massive shift in emotional energy from the humans, it affects the electromagnetic field of the earth, and that affects the random number generators for a certain amount of time. So for me, that's proof that our energy, our emotion, our frequency can affect what's going on in the world. And I absolutely believe that if the tipping point can be reached where there is enough people that go, I was really going to swear then, sod this, we're not doing this anymore. We are not doing this. You can go do what you like over in the corner. We are stepping into the light. We are stepping into abundance. We're going away from lack. We're going into empathy. We're going into love. That's when it will happen. Because then the ones that are perpetrating all of the nastiness, they all get affected by that. Their energy will not be strong enough to counteract the good energy, in exactly what you're saying now, in that exactly we are kept in a state of fear, because when you're in fear, you are controllable. Because all of your news, what is it? Everything is bad. Over in this country, we have ITV is one of the channels, and it used to be on the 6 o'clock news, and finally, and they used to do a good news piece right at the end, the dog that was found, whatever, a good piece. And I've so many times I've sat there and gone, why is the news always fucking bad? It really, really pisses me off. Sorry, swearing, whatever. But it's because you're compounded. These things are chucked at you, which you can do nothing about. You can, yes, all right, you're recycling, you can do that bit. But when there's wars going on in other countries and, oh my God, the climate's going and everything like that, it's all put on top of you and it's, oh my God, oh, this is it. You're put into that place of fear and lack. And just what you said, Christine, exactly what you said, that if we can change that and move the dialogue to positivity, and a lot of people do it now, they don't watch the news, and that's the first start almost, because it's so depressing. And for what? What does it achieve? Nothing, except to make you feel like shit. So yeah, I'm 100% with you.
Well, it goes back to there's a lot of studies and things that talk about if you think about, I think, and I could get this wrong, but I think that the maximum amount of people that our whole nervous system, brain, everything can handle knowing about and being in that community is, I think it's 17,000 people.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, what has happened with television news and what has happened with social media is that we're constantly being fed the atrocities and horrible things that happen around the world that our system is not designed to be able to handle. We were never meant to
To
have
know
that
that much.
going
No.
in. So
Yeah.
and it kind of makes me want to circle back for a second because somebody asked in the chat, they were talking about when we were talking back about the gut being
Feelings.
runny, and getting that gut feeling. And then they were saying, like, it sounds to me like one of the questions was, sometimes they get a gut feeling and it's not true. But I think that when that can happen is because something about this present moment is similar to a past event.
Mm.
And that's what triggers it. And the reason that it's triggering it is because our cup, that cup inside us that can handle stress and all of that is overflowing now all the time. Our nervous systems are cranked. So it doesn't take as much to flood us, to trigger us,
Mm.
for us to be in our nervous system, be in that gut clench or that heart constriction. So, and that's why it's really important to have an awareness of your hygiene, let's say, around how much am I letting in. I understand wanting to stay informed. I get that. I struggle with that too. But we, it's also the negative is what people will respond to. That there's an activation of the negative that you don't really get from the positive. The positive just makes you feel good. It's like affirming in a way, but the negative activates, and that there's a lot of built um, in the mechanism of the news and social media that wants activation because it generates income. So it generates sales. So, and it generates people coming back. They come back because the fear and they want to know. So it's really important that we become aware of this. And again, it's about seeing what you want to see in the world and believing it and operating in your nervous system and in the way you move in the world as if it's already here. Not that it might happen someday, but it's already here. And I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in New Jersey. I mean, I'm like, wait, all that, I still feel like, oh wow, like all those hippies and all those people that would just sit around with their guitar singing Kumbaya and tell people like, peace, man, you just gotta love each other. I- But it's kind of coming around that there's a lot more to that than meets the eye. It's a lot more powerful and influences our world. So it's so much easier to want to react. Like you can, I don't know about you, like I'll watch stuff and like it'll bring up this feeling in me, and I just imagine like what if there was such a thing as like a superhero that could just go in and just wipe those
Sort them out.
people up
Yes.
and put things right. And again, but I'm aligning with the idea of force too, of like I just need something stronger than the negatives thing, as opposed to changing the whole dynamic and seeing and feeling a world before it exists that is all about creating connections and being in that flow state and seeing each other as, that's a practice that that I do that can be hard. Like when I see someone that's like really unlikable, let's say, a really unlikable person. And then you go, okay, I got it. Now I have to
Make
see
it
that
smile.
as God too is in them, like universe, and they're from the same stardust that the nice people are from. And can I hold them and see them in that light, even if they're horrifying in their actions? So it's not easy is all I'm saying. And I think it's fine to feel like I don't know how to do that, or that feels like I'm denying what's like happening outside or what's happening in the world. But it's actually I'm thinking, and what I'm learning is it's actually transcending what is happening in the world and saying I'm not going to be responding to this. I'm going to be creating what I want to see in my little way, in my little life, in the way I react with my neighbor, with my kids, with my dog, with my community.
Yeah. Oh, that's, yeah, really. And I think, like you said about being informed, you can be informed but not buy into.
Mhm.
So it's a matter, as you said, you can look and go, okay, that's happened. And Bridget has put a good comment up there about be careful that our positivity is not based in a righteous place or it's tainted from the negative. Any lean to those people or then separates us. Division is a myth. Unity can only come from seeing ourselves everywhere. And I think that's where the point of no judgment comes, because I know I've been in situations where I've seen there's been atrocities, really violent crimes locally here, and talking about it with a friend, and we've both actually gone, but what happened to them to put them in that place to commit that crime? Yes, they've got to be judged by the law of the land, but I cannot honestly say that I wouldn't have done the same thing if I'd lived their life. That's the thing. We don't know what they've gone through. And like, when somebody was talking about it the other day on a podcast or something, about somebody cuts you up on, and it was about, they might have somebody in hospital they need to get to really quickly. Anything like that. They might be a dick as well, but who knows?
Yeah.
But the fact is that give them the benefit of the doubt. And at the end of the day, is it worth expending that energy of against them? And I know, I could say it's human nature, but it's not. It's taught. We learn this, that a baby doesn't come into the world with road rage. Everything is learnt from their environment and their experience. And that's when you look at your kids and go, oh dear, oh dear. Might have cocked up a little bit there, but it is what it is. But yeah, I absolutely agree about that it's trying to navigate yourself through the world, not being dragged into things, and not diving into the negativity, which can, especially the big groups of people, because then you're looking at tribe, and then you're looking at the person who's got to try and stand on their own to, away, go, well, no, I don't agree with that. And then everything that happens to them, because they're not joining in on the violence or joining in the shouting at somebody or calling somebody out. So there's so many levels to it, and you have to be, really strong to be able to do that. But I think the age I've got to now, it's a case of it is what it is. And that if I can go through the day just keeping everything in that positive energy, and let's face it, I don't do it every day. Have both hands up here. There are moments, quite a few at times, but the intention is there, and that's all you can do.
And one of the tricks that I've used is, and I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but the older I get, the more I look back at the young version of me and go, I was insufferable. Like, I don't know how anybody dealt with me. I knew everything. Everyone else was a hypocrite. And, I had all the answers. And I was making moves that boggle the mind. So if I look back at that, I can really tap into humility and go like, I have no idea what someone else's experience is. And gosh, luckily people didn't give up on me or write me off. So we're all on our path at somewhere. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
No, that's yes. I wondered whether we could look, because what we're looking at as well is people not believing. When we're looking at the telepathy tapes, how the evidence is there, and still people can't believe it.
Mhm.
And I will play devil's advocate just for a moment, because having come from a scientific background, and also being a total control merchant, that I
Mhm.
like things done in a certain way, and God help you if you don't, I have managed to let that go to a certain extent. But when I see things that really didn't need to happen, it irks me. And one of them was when, if you listen to the tapes, they're talking about one particular incident, and it's only one, but the trouble is that one is enough to make people go, oh, there you go, told you. And it's when, and I can't remember the name of the little girl, she's putting the coloured sticks in piles. And on the tape, it says there are 8 colours, and she was putting the 8 sticks. And when you watch the film, there's only 4 colours. Minor detail, she's still doing it. But the fact is, it's things like that that will really, the naysayers will go, told you so, told you so. The fact she's doing 4 colours is neither here nor there. It's, oh, it wasn't 8, like they said it was 8, and things like that. So for me, detail is very important. But and then, oh, this is big. Okay, so first of all, we look at the statistics. I said that word again. I did it really well. And Dean Radin's book, Real Magic, is fabulous to look at this, because he said, when you look at telepathy, it's been repeated from a dozen to more than 100 times by independent investigators at different labs around the world, with each class cumulatively involving hundreds to thousands of participants. The vast majority of these studies, and he wasn't just looking at telepathy, he was looking at psi abilities as well, but we'll put it all under the sort of banner of psi. The vast majority of these people were ordinary people, because it was better. They had no ego to try and prove something, if they were out in the world as a psychic or whatever. So they found that their 4 decades they've been doing these experimental protocols called the Gansfeld, for testing the existence of conscious telepathic impressions between pairs of isolated people. And it's been repeated by dozens of investigators around the world for 4 decades, including avowed skeptics, who, to their consternation and surprise, successfully replicated the effect. So even the skeptics could do it, but they still won't believe it. And what he talks about then is that people like that, he said, is there any amount of data that would convince them? And they generally have said probably not. And I asked them what original research that they've read, and mostly they admit they haven't read any. And for him, there is the definition of pseudoscience, basing conclusions on belief rather than data. Now, people like me who do my work, energy work, which can it be proved by science? And the interesting thing about science is the word science comes from Latin to know, to distinguish by separating, is rooted in the Latin word cindra, which means to cut. So the very root of the word science is let's see how much we can cut it up to get down to the truth. So there's not a holistic overview to it. And like you were talking about last time, at the certain point, was it Galileo, when it was like, well, we'll get rid of the mind and we'll just go, let's just keep on the maths of it all. So it's people, they're rooted in their beliefs. And this is the interesting thing, that why can we not change? Why is it so hard? And I just think it's the fear of the unknown, and it's the fear of losing control. Because if somebody can come forward and prove telepathy works, which, let's face it, we've got the proof, where does that leave us? Where does it go? All of the, we were talking about the aspect of control by bad news. Let's control the population, keep everyone in a state of fear. Then if we give them something, a command or do this, they'll do it because they're afraid of doing it. But if somebody now has their own mind, their own way of thinking, and it's proved, they've lost them because they're out of control, if you like. And it's something, the same with my work. I cannot prove anything, but my experience is my truth. I can't give that to anybody else. I've got all of this anecdotal evidence of people saying how they themselves, the horses, whatever, have changed as a result of a session. The only reason I know is because they tell me. I don't go looking for it, and I haven't got any data. I'd love to, I always say if I won the lottery, that's what I do, but I don't do the lottery, so that's a bit of a that's not going to happen soon. But yeah, it's the statistics. You can produce all of the evidence you like, but if people cannot shift their brain to that new paradigm, it means nothing. And this is what they're up against at the moment.
And for anybody that didn't watch or listen to that last gathering we had around this, is what Galileo did was he separated the inner science, like the science of the mind and consciousness and all of that, from material science, which is the outer world, because he said that the consciousness, the science around consciousness and all of that was just, it muddied the waters too much.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
there was no way to keep that in and create a mathematical, provable, materialistic way of measuring science. So he said it was the messy part, so he took it out. And what happens now is you said, my evidence is, my truth.
My experience is my truth. Yeah.
My experience is my truth. So the ideas and what they're talking about now is that we need to step outside of the materialistic view of science to be able to come up with ways of measuring and trying to study the things that are going to need to be measured and studied in different ways. And it does get messier, especially when you think about the intention of the person running the experiment can influence the experiment. So, it's not as clean as the materialist view. But Kathy, you don't have to tell the story, but I know you told the story at the UK podcast summit when you spoke. Was that only last year?
Yeah.
Wow.
August last year.
Okay. So last year. But you were working with a woman and you had something happen around your brother, I think.
Oh God, yeah. This has been very, very briefly, because some people might have heard it. Okay, so I had an older brother who was 5 years older than me, and he was like a different generation. And he's what you'd call the black sheep of the family. Very intelligent, but anyway, he buggered off down to lived with my grandmother. He got into drugs, and he basically got nicked for drugs, and he got put in prison. We then lost track of him. We had one contact with him, and then he disappeared, and we never heard from him again. So my parents, who lived in the valley just across from here, I'd go over there sometimes.
Wales, everyone, in case
Oh
you don't.
yeah, sorry, Wales, in the beautiful valley here in Wales, yes. Um, and they'd be sat there going, I wonder what's happened to Chris. His name was Christopher. And I'd be so angry because I thought he only needs one phone call from him, one phone call to say I'm alive, I'm okay, and that's all that would be needed. They'd know he was okay, but they had nothing. And I'd always say my dad had a very unique Polish surname because my dad was Polish, and I always said, you're the only one in the UK. Somebody would find you. If something happened, somebody would find you. So anyway, the upshot was, unfortunately, he actually got murdered in 1999, just before my dad's birthday. Big story there we won't go into. But I had a lot of anger about my brother, because I just thought what they went through was just unknown. Dad did know what happened to him. Dad did find out, that he'd been killed. Anyway, so I was working with this amazing, lovely lady called Larry, who's a creative kinesiologist. And she said to me, it was my brother was coming up, and she said to me, think of a nice place. And it's literally a field I can see from here. And it was beautiful green field, bright blue sky. And she said, is there anyone standing there? And I went, no. And she said, look again. I went, oh God. Yeah. And I didn't know where this was going. And I went, yeah, there's a man there, and he's got a long coat on, and she said, do you recognize him? I went, no. And she said, look again. And I went, oh my God, it's my brother. And I was literally, and I mean, this is what happens with practically every session, you're like journeying, and it was so real. And she said, is there anything you want to say to him? And so, yes, I asked him in no particular terms, why did you do that? Why did you not get in touch with them just to let them know you were alive? And he said the words that I never, ever thought of. It was, I was afraid of being drawn back in. And everything made sense, because my dad, very caring, but also very controlling in some ways, that, oh, come back, I'll give you money, I'll set you up in business, I'll do this, I'll do that. And the minute he said those words, I suddenly went, oh God, I totally get it. He put himself into the middle of Ireland in a hippie commune. That's where he died. And it was as far away as he could get. He was on a very similar path to me, which was really interesting, which makes me really, wish we could have spoken, because he was into, the spirituality and, different things like that. But that was the thing. And in that moment, all of the angst and the pain just disappeared. And I truly believe it was like a generational healing, that that I had picked up on that, I'd had that experience. But from then on, it went back as well. So I absolutely believe mum and dad knew. I think that's the story you're probably thinking about. There were several, but
It is.
yeah.
And a lot of that stuff now, ties into this idea that they're finding that experiences and memories of your ancestors, your grandparents, your parents are encoded in
DNA.
like encoded in your DNA, deep in the right recesses of your memory, which is wild. That just in itself, it's wild to think about, especially when you grow up in materialism
Yes,
science, right? Well,
exactly.
how can that happen? But I don't know how the picture shows up on my television either. Like
Yes,
I
yes.
don't
You
know,
ask
but
all the
it happened.
questions, yeah. No, but that, they did a study with the women who were pregnant and were affected by 9/11. So maybe they lost a partner or something happened in that respect. And they found that their babies were born with increased brain, decreased forebrain, because those mothers had been in a state of fear. So the babies were affected by what they were experiencing emotionally, and hormonally, because obviously the old adrenaline and everything was kicking in. And so the baby came out prepared for the world they perceived their mother was living in. And so they were, great athletes and everything, but there was a consistency that was noted.
Okay, so now that leads me to something that is totally maybe unrelated to this, but unrelated to the telepathy tapes. But I feel like I just read something about the dogs of Chernobyl.
Oh, yes, there was something, and I hadn't read it. Yeah.
And gosh, I wish I could remember exactly what it was, but basically, what it boiled down to is what's happening with the dogs of Chernobyl and the plants and the animals is turning our idea of evolution on its head, because the idea is that evolution takes place over thousands and thousands of years.
Mm.
And what they're seeing is that this is happening really quickly. Like you have radiation resistant plants, and you have like the way the dogs, the way the animals are evolving, they're
Mm.
evolving generation to generation, like directly. So that's wild too. Like I love, like, I think, Bridget said something about, yeah, like I love the fact that the world is a big mystery. That makes a
Mm.
lot of people very afraid. There's a lot of people that,
Actually, they're not in control. Not
right.
in
And control is such an illusion.
control.
But,
Yes.
they were talking about, and now I'm not going to, this whole freak conversation is about all the things I don't remember. But I don't remember what they called this, but it was this idea of when things change, right? Which is, at first you have the naysayers, and
Oh,
then,
yes. Yeah.
they come over, and they're the ones that quickly come over, and then there's the people that take a longer time, and then there's the people that to the very end were like clutching the old way of being, and then when they finally come over, they say, well, yeah, I knew that all along, you know.
Yeah.
And the idea was that, what, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, we'll look back at the resistance to this in the same way as we look at, the people who believe in the earth is flat, the flat earthers, like that, this idea that can't be, the earth can't be round, or, it's not even a thing, right? Like, because we've gone so far beyond it. And then we'll look back at this point in time and go, remember when
Yeah,
you're
we would
so
believe that.
resistant, no matter what was happening, they can't even explain the placebo effect. I bring this up all the time. Like, it's written into every scientific study,
Yes. Yes.
but nobody understands how it works. They don't know how anesthesia works. They just know it does. There's some
Yeah.
theories, but they don't know. So it's the mystery is all around us, and it's actually normalized, but yet you talk about another mystery, and that's ridiculous. So yeah, that's why I
I
like it.
totally hear you. And there's two things there. You were talking about the dogs in Chernobyl and how evolution is much faster. I'm sure it's in Merlin Sheldrake's book, Entangled Life, about fungi, that if they take away, I can't remember it exactly, but basically they take away amylase, or the enzyme to digest sugar, and put them near a sugar source, they can quickly regenerate. They can quickly evolve to have that um, enzyme back. There's something along those lines, that they take something away, but then they put them in the presence of what they need, or it's the other way around, that they take that away, but then they become able to live off a substrate that hasn't got sugar in it. It's a really quick process. It doesn't take generations for it to do. And the other thing, which is a in your face sort of example of what you're talking about, how the naysayers and then now it's accepted, is Bruce Lipton and epigenetics, because he was in the 1970s that he first discovered that if you put blank stem cells on different substrates, more alkaline, more acid, or whatever, they became different types of cells, nerves, muscles, whatever. And so that's where he was called a heretic, because he was saying that the controlling part of a cell was the cell membrane, because it was that controlled what came in from the outside, not the nucleus. The nucleus had the genes, but you can enucleate a cell, take the nucleus out, and it can still survive. Can't replicate because obviously it hasn't got the genetic material. But you take the cell membrane away, it's buggered. It's gone. And so epigenetics, the effect of the environment on the expression of our genes, was founded in 1976. He was shunned, called a heretic. It's now taught in schools at A level. 15, 16, 17-year-olds are taught epigenetics. And there you have the evolution of an idea.
Well, and he also talks about the whole idea of the Human Genome Project and the whole course of science where they said, everything was about your genetics and your DNA. Everything is pre-written. We just basically, humans were born and we just play out this already written role for ourselves with our health and our tastes and our wants and and then they got to a part where they discovered all of this, like, I think it was like all this blank space and all the, what was it called? The dark
Junk DNA, they call it.
junk DNA,
Junk DNA.
right. But that ended up ultimately unraveling the whole concept. They got to the point where and Bruce Lipton talked about there's all his work and so many studies that show that environment is way more of an indicator than your DNA. And I believe also belief, right? Not just the environment.
Absolutely. It's the effect of the environment. Yeah, absolutely. The belief. He calls it the biology of belief. That's his book.
But you can choose to not believe what your environment told you. You know what I mean? Like you could come from a very sickly family, right? And everybody connects and finds meaning and connection with each other, talking about their illnesses. You see that a lot. And you could decide, like, I don't want to be a sickly person. I may have physical things, but it's not going to be my identity. I'm going to choose to be in control of that in the best way that I can by taking the driver's seat with my health. So,
and one interesting factor again on DNA is that people with real schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder, their eyes can change color depend on which character they are.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I know it's mind-blowing, isn't it? So dependent on which personality they switch to, their eyes can change color.
Well, we all know about people's faces.
Eye color being, determined. So yeah, there's so much, as you said, there's so many mysteries out there, so many mysteries. But yeah, it's. But I did do a dig. Okay, coming back to the telepathy tapes, a lot of the naysayers about the spellers, about the system that they use for the thing. So I did a bit of dig into that because I was really intrigued. And I understand that they showing in some of the tapes, there seems to be a lot of contact between the mother and the child in certain ways. I wish they'd, again, this is one little nitpick. I wish they'd explained what they explained. I think it's in episode 7, in episode 1, how an autistic person can have no concept of their body at all. They don't know where anything is. And so it has to be a touch to bring them back into their body, to go, here's your hand, here's your hand, here's your shoulder, here's whatever. And so how the touch is important. So I can see how, the naysayers, the skeptics will go, oh yeah, but look, they're moving, they're touching, there's a code going on somehow. So I don't know if you're aware, there's a whole film on YouTube called Spellers, and it's all about, they follow 9 different non-verbal autistic people, and some of them have got a bit of speech. And an interesting thought, and I don't know if it was in that I found it or in another talk I listened to, but we accept Braille and ASL, American Sign Language. Both of those were denied when they were actually formed. When Louis Braille first formed Braille, and the children could, read and do things, they thought that the children were colluding, that they'd sort of, got together and gone, right, you tell them this when I tell them that, okay? And the same with American Sign Language. Neither of those were accepted when they first were formulated. Both obviously now are well accepted. So when you watch, I watched the Spellers film with absolute fascination, because yes, there are children there, or adults, young adults there, where the stencil is being held in front of them. And there's one lady that works for them, whose name I forget, who's very, she ended up, she had 2 children. Be careful what you wish for, this might be, because she said she always wanted to work with, I can't remember how she said it, sort of disabled children or something like in that sort of world. And she ended up with 2 children who were non-verbal autistic. And to begin with, it was like, oh my God. And then she really got into it. So she's one that you see teaching a lot of these children. And yes, they have the stencil, and she's encouraging them and spelling the words out. But by the end of the Spellers, sorry, it's called Spellers, Spellers. But by the end of the film, you've seen so many of them that are completely okay typing on their own. There's nobody touching them at all. And they're stimming and they're moving, and sometimes they have to be, no, finish the sentence, but they're doing everything independently. And one of them oh God, there was one bit that was just like, oh, this should be put across, because there's something called the ASHA, the American Speech, Language and Hearing Association, and they have really denigrated this rapid, it's called rapid prompting method. I think RPM is what they call it. As don't, they've written papers and gone, don't accept it. It's not real. It's not right. So when one of these spellers, a young lad, young adult he was asked what he thought of the ASHA not promoting or supporting RPM, he clearly and confidently, with no help from anyone, typed out, they're delusional. And I just thought, yeah, put that in your pipe and bloody smoke it. Because, so yeah, it was really, really interesting. And there was a teacher who was mentioned in the film but didn't want to be identified. And they said they needed 16 peer-reviewed papers for it to become evidence-based. But nobody would do the actual, what's the word? Looking into it.
The study.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then there was a form of help for autistic people, and I put that word in inverted commas, called ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis, that's what they use, trying to make autistic people behave like normal people, inverted commas again. And it was described by autistic people as traumatic and dehumanizing, and yet it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Well, and there
so,
you get to the crux.
Sorry?
Well, there you kind of get to the crux of things, because anytime in anything that money and power are involved, then you can have conflicting motivations to see things differently, because that's going to affect your status in this realm. So yeah, you can go on, but like that.
Yeah.
It's
and
kind
that
of,
actually,
yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, it was something else that was mentioned last time, was about people not being able to accept a different way. I know you and Shay spoke about that. And I remember when 20 odd years ago, Leslie Desmond came over, she'd been over a few times, and I organized a couple of clinics for her. And she was way ahead of her time in that, there'd be a horse come in that was completely frantic. And she would just take hold of the lead rope, and that horse would just go, oh, much like Warwick does now. There's a whole different concept. And then she'd tell people, stop staring at this horse, because everyone was like this. What is it going to do? What's it going to do? And she'd say, stop staring at it. And then she'd have a loose horse in the arena, and she'll say, right, I'm going to stop that horse at the far end. And she calls it stopping on the right hind leg, because that's the leg that generates the stop. And there it would happen. And she's 20 meters away from the horse. I've been in her presence when we've been walking past horses in a field, and she'll say, you see the second brown one on the right there? I'm going to get him to look at me now. And they're all grazing away, and that horse just goes boof and looks. And so she is showing to people this other way of being. And I have seen people get so angry at her clinics. I mean, really start shouting and God, this is absolute rubbish and blah, blah, blah. And she'll give them the money back. You know, she just takes no notice. But it's really interesting. But when you look and you think these people, and you can look at any sphere here, whether we're looking at, you know, the ASHA or whatever it is, or horse training or whatever, when people have invested 20 years in a certain way of working, and then somebody comes along and shows them something that cannot be denied is actually a better way, that's when the conflict happens. Because if they are not, you know, if the ego and attachment is there, they're not in the place to be able to give up all of that emotion and all of that time, all of those 20 years, and go, oh my God, that is it, I can see it. They're going, no, get thee behind me, I can't go there. So yeah, that was just something from last time as well.
So I have a question for you about what you were just talking about with the spellers and you know, the idea that one of the things about nonverbal autists is that they don't have a connection and control of their body, right? So, and they're aware of that. So on the surface, they can look like they have no idea what's going on, and they're in a, you know, not even with you, but they're more than there. So when we think about co-regulation, when you think about also the idea of horse herds or flocks of birds moving as one because there is a we're plugged in. Part of me, you know, wonders if that touch is allowing the autist to tap into the regulated body connection of the person touching and using their awareness of their body to find more awareness of their own, because they can kind of experience it a bit through the touch. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I totally hear what you're saying. And I absolutely, I mean, I don't know, but it could possibly, you know, it could well be that that touch brings them back. But another aspect, I think, is that from my understanding, you know, and I've got very limited understanding, you know, of the world of autism, is that they have so much sensory input, far more affects them than with ourselves. That is the touch, the thing that helps calm, that just helps bring everything back to that one point, because there's, you know, the noise or whatever, and they feel they have to do the movement in response. I don't know. And I mean, absolutely, because like you said, with the shoal of fish, the flight of bird, you know, the flock of birds, the herd of horses, they wheel as one,
Yeah.
without crashing into each other. And I know there are various theories on why that is, but it's far more, for me, it's far more a connection through the field that they are buying into than it's anything to do with anything else.
I also, you know, let's look at, you know, some of the critiques, right? Was the idea about, well, if some of the autists couldn't hold, like they don't have the body control to be able to even hold up their hand, their through their wrist to be able to type, right? So a parent or someone would hold under the wrist, right? So just to hold the hands in position, but they would move their fingers. So the idea is, oh, this is too much touching, although this would be an amazing magic trick to be able to just as it. But the thing that doesn't seem to factor in is a lot of those that needed that extra help eventually wean off of that and can find on their own. So wouldn't that alone disprove the idea that people touching their wrist are somehow influencing what they type? Like,
Totally.
how does that not get figured in that now this person has language, they have communication through typing?
That's something I wanted to ask the assembled group, because I'm really fascinated that these when they were introduced to the RPM, where they've got the screen in front of them, some of them were young teenagers and they could use them immediately. So somewhere along the line, they've been taught to read or taught how to spell, because they know how to put the sentence together. And I'm fascinated to find out. I try to find that out. How did they teach them? How did they teach them? One of the boys in the Spellers movie, he said 4-year-old autistic children can do maths, and because it's all looked at as if they're a cognitive failure, not a physical thing, because they can't. And it's so, what you were saying there about how, they start off by holding their hand and then they get better. And all of that you see in this film, that you see the progression, that in the end, some of them hold a keypad up to be at a right angle for them to actually touch the letters. But there's others there who are just typing the same as you and me. And then they've got a voice generator saying the words. But let's look at a child learning to ride a bike. To begin with, they have to have mum and dad holding them, even if they've got stabilizers, because they might go too fast, they might go in the wrong direction, they've been held. Then they've got the stabilizers, and then they go onto their own bike. Well, nobody denigrates them that, that child, I know it's a different thing, but I mean, it's a natural progress, a natural a natural way of doing things. They need more help, and then they don't need the help. But as you said, they can't. It's like blank. That's it. Because you've touched them, it's got nothing. It doesn't mean anything. But that's where I do wish that they'd said in the first episode what they said in the 7th, that the touch is really important because it brings them. And you see that all through then. If you go back to the first one and watch again, you see how they might just touch their shoulder or touch their hand. And this teacher who's teaching in the Spellers one is saying, no, come back, look, come back, bring your eyes back here, constantly drawing them back to because that obviously is hard for them to do, to keep the concentration on what they're actually doing. But I 100% agree that and some might never get it, absolutely, some might never get it, and they've got to have the stencil held up in front of them. But that's the whole funny thing, is that they're there typing like you and me, as it said, that one said, in response to they're delusional. Well, that's not a word that probably their mother would have put into the thing. So yeah, 100% with you there.
So the last one that I haven't finished was went into the realm of animals, and it was that really famous woman who,
Anna Breitenbach.
thank you, I didn't have to look it up. Yes, and it's funny because she brought up something interesting, which was that the closer, you can't do it on animals that you're close to. So it'd be hard for you to do it
Really?
on
Yeah.
dog or your own,
Did
because,
she say why? Yeah.
well, she was saying because you have so much invested
No, yeah.
in what the answer would be or the outcome, that to create that kind of clear, still water, that clear channel,
Yeah.
listen, would be much harder. But yeah, I found a lot of her stuff fascinating. And, she talked about her process where, she doesn't work with people and their pets anymore. She works more in conservation. But she was talking about when she was working with people and her pets, and she was working with this person's dog, and she said it was so bizarre because I got this vision of an eagle and like this man's arm, like holding up an arm. And she thought, she's like, well, I'm not going to say this because
Bit random.
I don't see what this means. And so she asked whatever question she was asking, like, is there anything you want to share? And she was dead silent. So it's the only thing she had to share was that. And she was actually in training at the time. So they were measuring her ability to do this.
Right. Okay.
It was like a clinical study. Um, and so she said it. She said, what I saw was an eagle and an arm. And I guess the owner just burst into tears because they were a young couple and her husband had recently died tragically. And he had a big tattoo of an eagle
Eagle on his arm.
on his arm, and the dog was missing him.
Oh my goodness.
And she was like, in that moment, it was like, okay.
I think hairs on the back of the neck job.
Yeah, this was um yeah, so and there's so much that has happened in that way. And it's really just funny because even people who don't believe in that stuff, right?
Mm.
And I feel like especially with horse owners, but with cat and dog owners too, is that there's a level of understanding that you have that is information passed without words, and what the animal wants or what it's trying to say, or you get a feeling, and yeah, sure, you're taking in a lot of visual and maybe auditory information, but sometimes it has nothing to do with that. Sometimes you could just get a feeling like, do you ever get those feelings like out of nowhere, like, oh, you should go check on,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you find that something is off. Like, and where did the feeling come from? Where did
No
the,
reason to do. Absolutely. Two things there. Firstly, if anybody on the call doesn't know, there's Anna Breitenbach. Her name is Breytenbach. She has got the most amazing video where she works with a black leopard, and she also works with the tribesmen. So she goes, and that's what I wanted to bring up as well. And thank you for mentioning the animals. Is that we're looking here at the telepathy tapes, and I mean, it's amazing that that was the #1 downloaded podcast, which shows the interest. It shows we're talking about this shift. People wouldn't have been interested in that. And you look at some of the films and stuff that's being made now, there's so much supernatural stuff or woo shit out there. It's amazing. So you've got that. But if you look, Anna Breitenbach, animal communicators, you look at the tribesmen who know where the animals are. Rupert spoke about the San tribe in South Africa. I can't think of the name of the tribe, but where they make an agreement with the animal to go and find it. And he tells the tale of when they found the muck on the floor and they looked, and he said, right there, don't look at him. And he pretended to strike the arrow because they weren't allowed to hunt. And then you have the tale Jane's husband said about getting lost in the jungle, and they said, well, we asked the animals how to get home, and were completely, well, don't you? All telepathy, all accepted. I've just found a link, and I'll try and find the name of the book, to talking about telepathy, and there's a tribe that speak to each other via telepathy. They can speak as well, but telepathy is the thing. Australian Aboriginals talk by telepathy. There are so many examples of it. Robert Wolfe, the original, oh God, again, another book, where he was with the Sengoi people, and one of them went to see the ocean, and the others could, Original Wisdom, that's it, by Robert Wolfe. And the others knew what he was talking about, even though they'd never seen an ocean. All of these are examples of what we're talking about. And it's spread out throughout the world on all different sort of levels of communication. It's not just about, with the autistic, non-verbal people. It's there. It's part of who we are. And like you said, within the Western culture, it's got shut down. And I don't think, the other thing I find really interesting is that people who have what are those, traumatic brain injuries, TBIs, how they can suddenly get a new skill. You know, they can play the piano, they can speak a language. And I just had a sort of a thought that, with this, is it we are too physical, and then something happens and that clears a way for us to go more into this type of ethereal connection or ability to download a different skill base. I just, you know, that was just a thought that passed through me when I was thinking about, you know, coming on this talk, because that was mentioned, the TBIs, how it changes people and they can suddenly have these skills. So I don't know whether there's a clarity comes because something changes where the lock into physical and it disappears or is changed, and so access to different information appears. Don't know.
Well, you know, I think that one of the reasons that this podcast has become the number one podcast is because this is the portion of our lives that we haven't had any place to put. Because I've never met a person that didn't have some story about some experience where for no logical reason this happened, or I had this dream and then, you know, it was so real and then this happened. Whatever it is like we've all had them. And most of us have had multiple. And there's been no safe place to really talk about it with the respect and integrity that it deserves. And now this podcast has kind of blown the doors off of that. And it was the reason why I wanted to talk about this in this forum, because I wanted to have a place to talk about all these things. And the thing is that, and I would say to anyone, is that I think that we should all be skeptical of things. I don't think that when you read something that aligns with what your belief system is, that is an automatic belief in what you're reading, right? That confirmation bias. Even if or especially if it's the thing that you really want to be true, because that's how we all get manipulated, right? And then that's also the sad thing is that when that takes off and then it gets disproven, it's kind of like the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater, then it kind of taints everything. So we want to be very respectful and careful and really vet things, right? But I am wide open to see what comes out of this, because I think this is the first big shift. And it's kind of combined everything from the internet and the web, podcast, which is a way a lot of people like to get information and you know, and stories, and a world that was ready for it. So that is what I'm excited about.
And I think open skepticism is the way to be.
Yes.
Listening. I mean, that's what a good scientist is open, skeptical, but willing to look into it, not the closed, you know, it can't possibly be. I would love to just, I know we're getting on to finish with old Nassim Haramein. We don't have to finish with him, but because I found this, he's bringing out a new paper in.
Is he? Who is he?
Nassim Haramein. So Nassim Haramein, Haramein. He's a quantum physicist who I followed for quite a while. I love it because he's totally irreverent. So he's not one of these, you know, and he knows his stuff. I know there's again with him, if you look him up, they go, oh no, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But he's proved the radius of a proton. There was a standard model that was 4% out, which is massive in quantum physics. And through him using this Planck constant, he actually got it to the right, and then they measured it. They actually, in Bern or somewhere, they actually, you know, in the accelerator, they actually measured it, and he was right. So he's been using this thing called the Planck constant, and he's produced a way of, it's got maths in it, but it's also, and this again goes back to what Shay and you were talking about last time, it's got ratios and it's got geometry, and I'm going to, I was going to say bastardize it, because it's probably, I'm going to ruin it. If there's any quantum physicists out there, I'm very sorry about this. But basically, through this Planck constant, which is tiny. So he said, if you think of the Planck constant as the size of a grain of sand, a proton radius would be from here to Alpha Centauri, which is 25 trillion miles. Okay, so we're talking about something really, really, really small, and it's this packet of energy, and we can't feel it as we go through life, or, you know, walk through the air, or we are in the field, because it's so tiny, but it's so full of energy. And this is where the new Tesla knew about this, and he was going into getting the energy from this, and that's why he got shut down. Just what you're saying, you know, when something is against the status quo, we shut it down, or there's various stories, you know, conspiracy theories about people disappearing off the face of the earth. Anyway, so he has found that this little Planck constant is like this rotating ball of energy, and he has discovered something he calls the coupling constant. And that, if you cut using this coupling constant, this little ball of energy, it's led him to carbon, and carbon is the basis of life. It's led him to the benzene ring, and then much further on, you know, lots of sort of couplings on, it's led into the tubulin, which is what you were talking about, the microtubules in the brain, and they said they found them in the heart, which are meant to be, they're thinking they're to do with consciousness. So from this tiny little ball, he has got coherent maths geometry that leads you from the energy of the universe to the brain. And so he's looking at this now. He's got a new paper coming out, and he was talking about a new ratio. He said, but I'm not talking about it now because it's coming out in my paper. There's apparently a big whatchamacall conference, Penrose and somebody, and it's all about consciousness. So, and he says, this is what I love. The universe is organized and synchronized. It has a mathematical beauty which is not pure maths, but just as we write music, which is a way to describe the music, but isn't the actual music. You know, the music gets played on the instrument. So maths is a way to describe the universe. The music for the universe is geometry, ratios, and relationships of all things, the interconnectedness. If you understand this, it leads to a beautiful understanding of ourselves and our relationship with the universe, because you understand you're interacting with the field. And for me, the other thing he spoke about, which it was like a hallelujah moment, was the speed of entanglement. Now, we know about the speed of light, and it's got a measurement. And we always, I've always said, ever since I've started doing this work and really got into it, change happens faster than the speed of light. And he talks of the speed of entanglement, which means if you had one proton here and another proton or you know, molecule, whatever, the other side of the far distant universe, if you change this one, that one would change exactly the same moment, because they're entangled. And previously I thought of entanglement being coming from the Big Bang. You know, Brian Cox, he talks about, well, all scientists talk about it as though that was the start of the universe. And Harriman sort of takes the piss slightly, because he goes, oh yeah, this magical Big Bang, we're not quite sure where it comes from. But what he talks about is that, and again, where did this come from? He doesn't go into. But if you think of this field of energy, and then things started to coalesce, vortices happened, because he talks about physicality being vortices of energy. And so that's how we get formed. But more than that, he talks about a fractal universe. And this is what I would say, it's one of his sayings: we are the universe informing itself from a relative viewpoint. So if you, Christine, you and I look at a tree, we're stood side by side looking at a tree, it's not the same tree because we're looking at a different angle, or we might look at it at a different time. And he says there's a fractal universe. All the information of the whole universe is in every proton. That's the holographic part. And again, I don't understand it all. There's bits that I can go, oh yeah, and then I go, oh no, I don't understand, that will help. But what I'm getting at here is that when we're looking at the telepathy, they're looking at the connection between these people, which is instantaneous. You can start to see how the field could be that the what's the word, the medium through which it happens, because it's all energy and information. And if we're all linked through this Planck constant, through this energy, then you start to see how these things could actually happen, and how the quantum physics is actually starting to explain what is going on with the telepathy and all of the psi stuff. Sorry, I just love that. I probably didn't describe it well, but it's just like, ah.
I think you described it very well, and it it leads into things that my brain hurts when it tries to think
So
about,
smart.
like listening to the guy I was talking about earlier say that, you know, we don't really know what it means to be conscious, because what it means to be conscious for me is going to be different. Every single person is having its own their own experience of consciousness.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now my brain hurts. And we don't even know if what I see and feel is the same as what you see and feel. And it gets into, he was actually saying, like, he doesn't believe that we're inside a matrix, right? That we're living inside a simulation. Sorry, a simulation. He said, but it does help to use that as kind of an analogy of how consciousness works or life works, because if you see that you create everything and it leads from you, he said it way better than me, but basically it's a good framework to have as a way of looking at life. So on that,
I
really,
just think is the one thing there is that, and I might have mentioned it before, but where he says we are the universe. So for me, all the information that has ever has made everything from aeroplanes to space shuttles to whatever is in the field. And it's when the person is in the right place to receive that information, it happens. Because I believe that information has been there since the creation of the universe. It's just that have we got to the place as this peculiar little humanoid physical thing that is informing the universe as well. Because when somebody goes through a trauma and comes out the other side, or has been very depressed and comes out the other side, I just rejoice in saying to them, do you realize you have informed the universe and you've put that information out there for the next person to pick up? And that's what I believe we're here to do. That's what our job is. We are here in physical form for the 10 score years and 23 score years and 10, or whatever the bloody saying is, to experience the universe in a physical form. And that information goes back into the field. And then when we die, we go back into energetic form and we're back in the field. That's my belief system. And I'm not imposing anything on anybody else. But I just think it just makes sense to me that why we're here and what we're doing. Because everything that we do, what you said there about you experiencing something differently from the next person. And what is consciousness? Is consciousness us being here, experiencing the universe? End of. Don't know.
and on that note,
It's time for tea or breakfast. Yes.
oh my gosh, Kathy, I could go on for 2 more hours.
Oh, I
probably.
love. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, because I have had a ball. Oh my God.
It's
So
always
enjoyed it.
a joy to spend time with you. And uh, we'll probably, I will definitely ask you to come back again and continue talking, especially because, we're going to have even more to talk about. Like I just realized that I didn't know that there was more telepathy. Was it the talk tracks that came out? So I'm catching up on those, but then we're going to have season 2 of the telepathy tapes and even
Mm.
more to talk about. So this is just my thing that
This is
I
the
did it
introduction.
because I wanted to have it for myself. I want to get people together and talk about
I love
it.
it.
So before we go, I will ask, does anybody have anything that they wanted to ask Kathy before she goes? Because typically we make it more interactive, but we've just been like on a
We've
roll.
just been talking.
Yes.
Whoops.
So yeah, I just thought I'd put that out there just so if someone was like sitting on their hands trying to
Going,
like
please, I want
wait
to ask. Yeah,
for
no,
the
absolutely.
reaction.
And I'll find that link to the stuff,
That would be
where you can test yourself, because that's really cool.
so I'm going to um create the video for this and get it up on the Facebook page and send it out to the email list. So everybody has it and we'll put as much stuff as we can in the show notes. And thank you everybody for being part of this.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so cool.
And we'll
Really
see you
enjoyed it.
next month. All right. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye.